This is The Journey, podcast edition. If what you're building didn't come with a playbook, you're in the right place.
Hey builders, welcome back to The Journey, where we talk shop about growing, scaling, and building stuff that's real. Today we're unpacking a phrase you've probably heard before. It's one of those lines that gets tossed around like a gospel truth in business circles. You need to work on the business, not in the business. But what's that actually mean? If you've nodded along in meetings when someone dropped that line but didn't really dig into it, this episode's for you. Let's start with the first half of that statement, working in the business. This is the grind. It's the doing, the day-to-day, the meetings, the emails, the operations, the sales calls, the late-night bug fixes, the packing of boxes if you're a product shop, or troubleshooting with a client if you're in services. If you're a founder or a team leader, this might be where you feel the most useful because you are a doer. And truthfully, working in the business, it feels good. You can measure your efforts in real time, you cross things off the list, you put out fires, you answer questions, and you move things forward. You've got a checklist. You check things off, and that feels great for a lot of people. If you're a leader, and depending on your style, this might look a little bit different for you. Maybe you're big on delegation. You empower others to run their areas while you provide air cover. Or maybe you're the roll-up-your-sleeves type, working shoulder to shoulder with your team. Personally, I lean towards that second style. I'm very much a servant leader, so I tend to be in the trenches with the team when it matters most, showing up, being present, and frankly, if you're asking others to believe in your vision, sacrifice their time, and work through tough moments, you better be willing to do the same if you want to build loyalty and build relationships with the people that are helping you in turn build your business. But that's me. There are many roads to get to the same endpoint, the same goal. Here's the trap though. When you're always deep in the trenches, whether it's through a style of delegation or whether it's through a style of doing, you can lose perspective. You start solving symptoms, not the root causes. You run the hamster wheel. You chase the thing that's right in front of you. You respond rather than design. You can't see the forest for the trees, as they say. Let me give you an example. I worked with a founder a few years back who was spending 70 hours a week inside the business. He knew everything about every customer, every complaint, every delay in delivery or planning. He was proud of that, and it was a big accomplishment. His scope of knowledge, the depth of what he knew about his business was unparalleled. It was unbelievable. But when I asked him what his business might look like 12 months out, he couldn't answer. Not because he didn't care. He was deeply invested. He just didn't have the headspace to dream or to think seriously about tomorrow. He was stuck solving today, every single day. That's the problem with being only in the business. You can become essential to the engine, but it's also you becoming its biggest bottleneck for growth. So that kind of brings us to the second half of the phrase, working on the business. This is where strategy lives. It's where vision becomes action. It's how you build systems that don't rely on heroic efforts of any one person. You as the founder, you as the team leader, or even your superstar employees, your superstar colleagues who really shoulder a lot of the burden. Working on the business means stepping back, zooming out, asking yourself, how does this machine actually work? Where are we leaking time, money, or energy? What are we building? How do we make it better? There's one simple mindset shift that I use when I'm getting into a problem like this with a founder or with a builder. Treat your business as a product, something to iterate, to upgrade, and to improve over time. You might already do this for your actual products or services, including new features, tweaking the UI, collecting customer feedback. But when's the last time that you took those same principles and applied them to your company, the organization that you're building, the structure of a team, how something is delivered to customers? And this is where it gets really interesting. What if you treated your employees like they were customers? I don't mean that in a transactional way. They have needs, right? That's what I mean. They're choosing to spend their time and effort with you. They expect value in return. That could be fair pay. It could be meaningful work. It could be a sense of progress in their career. For some people, it could be autonomy or recognition or just less friction in their day. So what if you started asking your employees questions the same way that you'd ask customers questions? What's working for you? Where are you getting stuck? What would make your job easier? What tools do you wish we had? What resources do you wish that you had? How could you be better supported so that you can do great work and be happy doing it? When you start to gather those insights, you're not just fixing issues. You're building capacity, or at the very least, you're building the framework that will become what you can use to build capacity. You're designing a business that can scale. And if you don't have the answers, ask, listen, iterate. Now you're working on the business. So let's bring in some tangible practices. Let's think about that in a very clear way. One of my favorites is time segmentation. It's deceptively simple. Spend 3 weeks a month working in the business. Spend 1 week deliberately working on the business and get out of the details. The on week, no meetings, no fire drills, no Slack pings, just space, thinking, design. Use that week to review your systems, map workflows, revisit your strategy, build a better hiring funnel, audit your pricing funnel, analyze churn, set OKRs, whatever's going to help you move the needle long term and build the capacity to have a better, growing, more resilient business. Here's a pro tip from someone who I'm not going to name on the show, but I'm very, very, very fond of them. Treat those on the business projects like real work. Don't let them be abstract, because once they are abstract, you will become abstract. Personally, I like abstract thinking in measured doses. If you get a little bit too wishy-washy, philosophical about your business, it starts to come undone at the seams pretty quick. But I do like thinking a little bit 30,000 foot what if when it comes to building an organization, designing a business that can scale. So when you get to being clear about your working on the business projects, write them down, build a plan, assign ownership, track progress, use frameworks. Like the Smarter Goals framework is pretty useful when you're doing this, right? And Smarter Goals, you want to set goals that are specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, timely, and then which is the iterative loop, can be evaluated and also revised. It's not busy work. This is really the core, the heart of leadership, of building a company that can grow and scale. It's important stuff. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds great, but I'm drowning. I can barely get through my inbox, let alone carve out a week. Totally fair. But let me offer you this. Working on the business doesn't have to be a retreat to a mountain cabin somewhere with a whiteboard and a soy latte or something, kind of silly like that. It can start with a notebook and 30 minutes. Ask yourself, what's one process that frustrates my team? What's one metric we don't track, but we should? What's one thing only I can do right now? And what would it take to change it so that I'm not the only one who can do it? Start there. One last point before we wrap up. You don't have to choose between in or on. And personally, I don't think you should. I'm a big believer in leadership, founders, builders, and senior executives being in the nitty-gritty of the business, being up to their elbows alongside everybody else. I mentioned that I'm more of a servant leader. I just think that leads to better outcomes for creating resilient, sustainable businesses. So yeah, I think you should do both. And that's really where the magic is, right? You do both intentionally with rhythm, and you have clarity about which hat you're wearing at any given time. That's really important, like carving out time to be working on the business and carving out time to really be in the business, creating that separation. Once you commit to it mentally and you build habits to do that, you will be absolutely amazed at some of the change that happens in your productivity and your performance. When you work in the business, you stay close to the pulse. You understand your people. You build trust. Those are important things. When you work on the business, you elevate the system. Opportunities become clearer. Friction becomes something that you can address and make disappear. Those are important because they allow you to scale with more ease. You need both. The only thing that doesn't work, drifting between the two without awareness and trying to multitask on things that are in the business and on the business. Those things don't blend. There's a very particular mental shift and separation that needs to happen for it to work. So I'm going to leave you with this reflection. Ask yourself, when was the last time you paused and worked solely on your business? What's one area of your operation that could benefit from a strategic rethink? What's one small, well-understood question you have about something that isn't working quite right in your business? And lastly, what's stopping you from scheduling the time to start working on the business? That's it for this edition of The Journey. Thanks for listening. Now, go block some time in your calendar. Make it sacred, because building a resilient, sustainable, growth-oriented business depends on you being able to take a step back. Check out the link in the show notes for our companion post on Substack with the tools and downloads and all of the goodies. Catch you around.
And that's it for this episode of The Journey Podcast Edition. If you're building something from scratch or scaling something messy, make sure to follow, share, or just send this to someone else in the trenches. Until next time, keep climbing.